And we are live. Welcome back, ladies and gentlemen. I am one of your co-hosts, Blake Ruffino. Alongside me is my counterpart and co-host, Joe DeLeone. Good evening, good sir. How are you?
I'm doing great, Blake, and I'm doing even better after what I just said to you like 5 minutes ago before we went live. We were talking about how media days are creeping up around the corner. We're like 2 weeks, less than 2 weeks. The 13th is when
11 days. Well, the day's pretty much over with. You're pretty much 10 days away.
Yeah, 13th is the day that SEC Media Days open. The following week is when Big Ten Media Days open. I don't think people realize how close the season is. I was texting with somebody earlier today, and he said, "Oh, it's going to be a really long offseason." I'm like, dude, the offseason's over. The season's about to start. And when I make that realization, it gets me juiced up.
So I think for me, because I get to cover a national title in baseball, and did it in 23 and did it in 25, that is so convenient that we have so much content to talk about in covering LSU that literally a week later you turn around and it's SEC Media Days.
Yeah.
And you get to hear from Brian Kelly for the first time in 5 months, or whoever's head coach it is, or for any team that is in Omaha and makes that run. I mean, dude, I'll be honest with you, Joe. I mean, it hasn't. I haven't really slowed down. You know, normally like last offseason, I was able to settle down and wait a month, and everything was fine. And now I'm just feeling like I'm go. By the way, today I broke a lot of things down on the University of Clemson, and I'm just going to tell you something right now. I'm starting to get a little bit more bought into the University of Clemson, depending on what LSU does. I still think they have their vices, but we're here, brother. Welcome to college football. 4th of July is Friday, and there's going to be a lot of fireworks, and then it's on, buddy. We're here.
That's always when like the page flip is right after the 4th of July. It's just like that. We're already NFL training camp is getting kicked off before we know it. We've got these media days popping out. Then guys are going to be in pads. They're going to be hitting. So the bigger reminder for me, Blake, was that like, man, we still have a lot more teams that we want to get to, and we've done a really good job of previewing these teams. And we've kind of got like these last few weeks or so until we can literally just focus on talking about games. We're that close.
With all due respect, you do realize in 3 weeks, me and you are talking about games.
Yeah.
Welcome, buddy. We're here, brother. I mean, you got 21 days, and we're talking about probably Ohio State and Texas in week 1.
Right. Which we will preview 2 weeks before everyone else does, like a bunch of psychopaths.
Yeah, because we are psychopaths. Nevertheless, Joe, speaking of some kind of popping news before we get into it, we got lots that we need to discuss. We'll talk about Oklahoma and continue on our path and our deep dives. And we go to the Sooner State to do it. Georgia continues to be hot in recruiting, and Jeremiah Smith makes a pledge to the fans of Ohio State. But today it was announced that the University, I was going to say University of Louisiana State, but LSU made some waves today. I want to make this very, very clear that is still waiting NCAA approval to put advertisements on their jerseys in reference to sell them for football through games to regain money on the $20.5 million that they got to spend with TV revenue money. Yeah. Joe, I'm going to speak a lot about this in about an hour. I'm just going to kick this over to you because I got to be honest with you. The pushback that is coming right now, I don't get. I don't understand. It's kind of pissing me off. What did you think was going to happen with some of these situations? But your thoughts on LSU potentially, if approved by the NCAA, putting advertisements on their jerseys?
I've been like blown away by the reaction I've seen on social media about this. Why are people upset about this? Why do you care? This has always been like one of the weirder things about college athletics. We don't talk about this with NFL teams. Why do you care how they approach finding ways to make money? Why do you care how much your athletic department makes? You should be happy with the concept that your school and your brand is so valuable that you could have a brand pay you millions, tens of millions of dollars potentially to be a patch on your jersey. We're not talking about Chick-fil-A or Raising Cane's across the chest of
Well,
LSU
don't say
Jersey.
that for Raising Cane's and LSU, because Ty Graves is an LSU guy. So hold on.
But I wouldn't be shocked if that doesn't end up being the jersey logo. But what I
said, hold on.
Yeah, well, what I'm getting at though, Blake, is that we're not destroying the jerseys to put a logo on there. And I brought this up to you before we started. Greg Sankey, there's a quote from him over a year old being asked about this question. And he said, well, we already do corporate logos for bowl games on jerseys. So we're already starting to trend towards that direction. If you want to know what it's going to look like, go look at the freaking pictures. This is the dumbest offseason outrage over something that's going to help your team that I've ever seen. Everyone needs to relax. And if your team's in a national championship game or in the college football playoff, you're not going to be given a crap.
No, you're not going to be given a crap. And I, for once, agree with Sankey on something in reference to this. I mean, Joe, are we mad that the Nike swoosh is on the jerseys or the Under Armour swoosh or Under Armour logo is on the jerseys? They pay for the goddamn jersey. Like, what are we talking about here? You know, I was tempted, Joe, to, in reference to LSU doing it, Joe, I remember the Chick-fil-A Peach Bowl and a team that we're going to talk about in 2019 and technically 2020 when LSU went to Atlanta and beat the shit out of Oklahoma, and they got a massive Chick-fil-A patch on their shoulder. They got a patch on their shoulder, and nobody gave two flying shits. No one cared. Why would you care? Joe, here is the God's honest truth. A federal court system is mandating universities to pay $20.5 million while still holding on to Title IX. I mean, with all due respect to everybody that's out there, I don't mean this disrespectfully. They got to do what they got to do for football to make sure women's athletics and some men's athletics stay afloat. It's just the truth. Football continues to have to eat the shit of all these other situations because of what's going on. Joe, $20.5 million. 20.5. And football.
Where's this supposed to come from?
Where exactly? Thank you. You took the words out of my mouth. Where is it supposed to come from? Where? Listen, I am not saying by any stretch of the imagination, zero out of the imagination, that I hate women's athletics, some men's athletics that does not get the pub, track, golf, whatever. I don't hate it at all. Joe, they're money suckers, pause. But they are. I mean, you literally have football funding all of these institutions, and you're continuously having to, Joe, going to Ty Graves and say, can you please give us $5 million a year so we put the Raising Cane's patch on our jersey? I mean, I think that everybody looks at this and says to themselves, well, I hate it. Well, I hate it. Well, guess what? When schools were fighting for their lives, you should have done something about it. Now they have to do something about it, and here we are.
Yeah, there has to be something done to find new revenue streams. And I'm sure that there's going to be more creative, less in-your-face ways to do it. I think that there's going to be a lot more like content creation with athletes. I think that there's going to be a lot more ways that you're going to be able to market your programs, market brands, brand partnerships with those things, a ton of different avenues. But this could potentially be the most lucrative because we take into account the company that is advertising appearing in a broadcast on the jersey, people buying those jerseys so that they can wear them to the games and to bars that also has the corporate logo on there. I think that the NBA is a perfect example of how they do it. It's quite minimal. It is a piece on the jersey that does not distract or take away from the jersey. It is just an added measure in order to create another revenue stream. A funny angle, though, for this, outside of the outrage or the counter outrage to the outrage, I kind of wonder, I think that the NCAA would limit this, but I kind of wonder if like someone like FAU or FIU that has lower financial standards if they wouldn't turn it into like a whole NASCAR jersey where it was just loaded up with logos. I kind of would support that because like how funny would it be if a random team just suddenly got good because they covered themselves in logos?
Here's my thing. I will push back on one thing. It's got to be one.
Yeah, I don't disagree with that. I'm kind of just
I know you. Well, I know that Pitbull would probably go hard for FIU, right?
Yeah.
I get what you're saying. I do think it'd be funny, but I think that the NCAA should limit it to one. And here's the thing, Joe, I'm just going to tell you this. I hope they deny LSU because guess what? As soon as that happens, they're going to the federal court system.
Yeah, but why do you want to waste money and time on
because
I don't think NCAA is going to deny this. I really don't.
I do not believe that they are going to either. But regardless, Joe, again, talking to administrators today in reference to what was Wilson Alexander's piece. This is not a football scoop piece. They didn't even credit Wilson Alexander in the piece that he wrote on July the 1st in reference to the logo placement. Okay? No one gave a shit until Football Scoop and Zach Barnett or whatever his name is started flipping his ever-living shit. Newsflash, bud. LSU is not the only person and only team that's going to be doing this. Everybody is going to be doing this if this gets approved. LSU is just the first team in doing it. I will tell you this in the article that Wilson Alexander wrote that is beautifully written and from people I've talked to at LSU. Joe, it's not football that's keeping them down on this. Football, they do not need to generate more revenue from football. They have an issue because they are a nationally accredited, nationally recognized brand with Kim Mulkey in women's basketball. They just won a national championship in baseball. They just spent a shitload of money in basketball. They just came in second place in track. Joe, where does that money come from? To replenish all of this. By the way, I don't know if people realize this. Did you know in the House settlement case, universities now have to create more scholarships? Joe, in the SEC, on average, schools are giving 62.5 more scholarships this upcoming year in Wilson's piece, 62.5 more scholarships. Baseball is getting 24 of those more scholarships for most of the SEC. Joe, where in the flying hell is that money coming from?
The simplest way in any world, this is an entertainment product now. This is not a extracurricular activity like some people want to pretend. In the entertainment world, you have to find ways to create advertising. And if you've already maxed out those opportunities, the next logical location is the simplest place to put it.
This is so stupid, bro.
I know. It is quite dumb. I'm actually so shocked that anybody would be upset about this. And to be quite blunt, to any other fan bases, I am not directing this to just LSU fans when I'm talking about this. This is going to affect a lot of schools. This is going to be something that happens to a lot of football programs because this is something that's been talked about for over a year now. This has been talked about for some time.
Listen to me. I know for a fact. Listen to what I'm saying. There are schools that are hesitant to give some kids in high school recruiting when talking to them about NIL and TV revenue because they don't have the money. If this gets LSU, who just got a 5-star commit in Trenton Henderson, because they have the funds and they know that they have the funds, that they can – I mean, Joe, this is open negotiations. They going to stroke that check. They got to find the ways to be able to stroke that check. So, right. Again, look, I have been – and people probably think on this show that I have been very LSU friendly. Go to AYS and watch last night's show, and you will see that things do not get always friendly. I am telling you, this will not be the only one. Ohio State could have done this, and I would be fighting the same way. This is stupid. I'm sorry. I can't do it anymore. I think, Joe, here's the thing. I ultimately believe that it's because some of the media, and I am calling out Football Scoop here, I don't care. They have taken an angle of old school. Buddy, I get what you're saying. I understand what you're saying. You got to wake up to reality. Reality at some point has got to set in. Does some of this stuff happening in college athletics suck? Yes. At some point, we all got to grow up. Wake up, Pinocchio, because we're here. You're a real boy.
Right. Absolutely.
Sorry.
No, this is reality.
I vented on you, but I needed to.
I don't disagree.
All right. Joe, let's get to a quick break. When we come back, Jeremiah Smith pledging we ain't ever losing to Michigan again. Well, Jeremiah, I mean, hold on now, man. You better be cool. Be cool now, Jeremiah. We'll talk about that. Georgia on an outright heater in recruiting. We'll talk about that, and Joe will get to our Oklahoma deep dive here. Before we do that, everybody do us a favor. Hit the like and share to all those groups. If you're on Facebook and to all those social media pages. If you're watching this, listening to us on YouTube, like, subscribe, notification bell, wherever you listen to podcasts. Smith, the bona fide and arguably, and well, probably not even arguably, best wide receiver in college football, made a statement to On3 this week saying, and I quote, "We are not going to lose to the University of Michigan any longer while I'm here." Caught a lot of head waves. Obviously, the situation with Michigan and Ohio State is Michigan's had their number at least the last couple of years here. Joe, your thoughts on Jeremiah Smith pledging that they are never going to lose to Michigan while he is there at Ohio State?
I love it. I absolutely love it. And I need to be very clear here to reference for anyone who wants to backtrack to what we talked about with Tommy Castellanos and how we called him out and said, hey, man, why are you taking shots at an opponent? He hasn't proven anything. Well, I
don't think that's a shot. Do you think it's a shot?
No, I'm talking about Castellanos. I'm just trying to say that, like, we criticized Castellanos for making statements about a game before it was played, and we were really critical about him and needing to prove himself. He hasn't played at Florida State. He's been really inconsistent on the field, and everything that happened before he left Boston College. This is completely different circumstance. Most hated rival. Most uncomfortable loss that Ohio State possibly has suffered because it was during a national championship run season. And Jeremiah Smith is your leader. He is the true leader on this team with all those guys that you just pushed out to the NFL. I say hell yes to this. I am excited by the fact that Jeremiah Smith is thinking, I am going to lead the charge of belief that we will never lose to this team again. Also, one other thing I want to add, I don't think anyone's talking about this, but in his quote, he said, I can't lose to them in the next 2 years. I think he very clearly indicated that he's probably going to leave after his junior year, which isn't, a crazy thing to project and assume that he would have left.
Why was everybody freaking out saying that, oh, well, he only said the next 2 years? Did you ever think after last year that he was not going to come out after his junior season?
Right. He's going to come out. But that was one thing that I kind of, it's indirect. We can notice that he pointed out that basically he's going to declare for the draft.
Read the room. I feel as if that in so many ways, Joe, when we do business or podcasting or we talk about sports, sometimes we criticize people for not reading the room, right? This told me more about Jeremiah Smith more than it said anything about his disdain for Michigan. What's interesting about what Jeremiah Smith did versus what Castellanos did, in today's age, as we got done talking about logos going on jerseys, Joe, it feels like from Jeremiah Smith that he cares more about the university than anything else. With NIL, I feel like people have come out and said, oh, it's all about the money now. Kids are so spoiled, yada, 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 yada. This dude really cares about losing to Michigan and Ohio State. I mean, it was a little bit comforting, if I'm being honest. Castellanos went a little too far. I don't hate that he took a shot. I hate how he took the shot. Yeah. Jeremiah Smith is saying, look, and listen, he's sending a direct message to his teammates. No more. None. I think, Joe, it shows a lack of laser focus in a way that in a sense of, hey, man, when I'm working out, I'm thinking of Michigan. It's old school, like do it for the name on the front of the jersey, not the back of the jersey. I love this. Read the room. He knew that this would get everybody fired up. If he would have gone after Texas, if he would have gone after somebody else, might have been a little bit different. It's the biggest game in the Big Ten. Ohio State and Michigan. Nobody thought that Jeremiah Smith liked the University of Michigan. Now, if he goes out there against Texas and says, hey, man, y'all suck, that would be completely different. I will say this. When you do say that, though, you can't have 5 catches for 35 yards against him.
Okay, fair.
If we're going to praise what he says, I am praising what he's saying. Don't get it what I'm saying twisted. When you talk the talk, as Migos says, you got to walk the – is it Migos? I think it's Migos that says walk it like I talk it. If you're going to talk it, you better be able to walk it. Sorry, I was lifting weights.
That is Migos. That is Migos. I didn't realize that was the
By the way,
you're trying to make.
I don't know what a Migos is. It just came on when I was working out today. But, I mean, the Migos do say this.
I don't know if they're – I don't think that they still make music. They were really popular in the weight room when I was playing in college. But to get back to the point, okay, I get what you're saying. I give him a little bit of more grace than the typical player because he was a freshman in that game. And
fair.
I don't put that on his shoulders because the rest of the team needed to step up. Will Howard had a really bad game. They were just so messy trying to move the ball on offense. He couldn't be the only guy to step up. Now, he stepped up in the biggest game necessary in the national championship game, and we saw the team rally around him in the Texas game. But I think that my biggest standout with this statement is him being incredibly mature for understanding his role, not only with this team, but with the fan base and with the brand.
Agreed.
I thought that this was a very concentrated statement to be like, we're not losing to them again. I might be reading into that like way too deeply, but a lot of times when you hear quotes and stuff about rivalries, it's a whole lot of nothing. Jeremiah Smith making a promise like this, he's going to be held to it. He's going to be really held to this. He's got to step up, and this team has to step up and actually win these next 2 years. Otherwise, he's going to get incredibly criticized. It's going to get brought up every single time if they lose for every single day and after said loss.
Mm-hmm.
Michigan is only going to get better. I will say that much. They're only going to get better over the next couple of years as Bryce Underwood steps in and they're recruiting at this elite level that they are. But Jeremiah Smith, I think, can lead this squad to 2 victories in the next 2 years.
They need more than him.
Yes.
I mean, listen, I don't care. Listen, I don't care how you win sometimes unless you win. Like winning to me, Joe, do you ask Michigan if they cared that they beat Ohio State 13-10? Does it matter any inkling to them whatsoever? None. Zero. Zilch. If they would have won, Ohio State would have won 13-10, it wouldn't have mattered to them either. I agree with what you're saying. You're a freshman. They try to take you away. But again, you got to hold people to that standard. And to your point, which is brilliantly brought up, you mean to tell me that noon kickoff, that College Game Day is not going to bring this up at the end of the season? Do you think that this isn't going to go in and everybody's going to be talking about this going into and building into the week? Joe, when Ohio State loses their first game this year, if they lose a game this year, the first statement that's going to be brought up is about Jeremiah Smith. Hey, maybe you should have been worried about Texas before you worried about the end of the season. When you say statements, they have consequences. You and I both know that when you have a statement and a thought and a take, and you go out there publicly with it, nobody knows more than media about how people can twist your words around. Nobody. Maybe the president of the United States, whoever that may be at any given time. You get my point. Mm-hmm. You better go out there and perform, and you better go out there and win. Because like you said, if you don't, Joe, they're going to rub this in his face. Now, at some point, they're going to beat him, right? Like they're going to beat him. They're just too talented. We'll see, though, man. I don't hate this statement. I love this statement. It shows me a little bit of focus of – and, Joe, when I read it, the first thought that came to my mind, he's calling out his teammates.
Yeah.
I don't know why. I just felt as if it's like, hey, man, like, listen, we won a national title, but we still lost to Michigan. That's how I read it. Like, get your ass in the weight room and let's get moving.
Right. I mean, that's kind of like and this is like the mature leadership of finding a proactive way to rally your teammates too is being direct, not calling anybody out, but just saying that, like, hey, we're not losing in the next 2 years. There's a young core that's stepping up for this Ohio State team. He is the leader of it. And if they continue to progress and to grow, there's no reason why they can't beat him the next 2 years. There's no reason why in the next 2 years they can't get back to a national championship. So much can be accomplished.
Very much so. I agree. Jeremiah, you better win, though. Again, you better win, or it's going to get bad for you. All right, Joe, let's move on here. We have been doing, because it's the month of June and this were a lot, or July, because in the month of June and July, a lot of recruiting and commitments happen here. Joe, we hit 4 on our last show on Monday. We need to go to the University of Georgia, as they are also on a heater here in recruiting. Stop me if you've heard this before. Kirby Smart's one of the best recruiters in the country. Oh, I don't think me and you have ever said that on this show before, that Kirby Smart's an elite recruiter. But regardless, the number 2 overall class per On3 is the Georgia Bulldogs, led by Kirby Smart. Your thoughts on the continued dominance by Kirby and staff and what they've been doing?
They've had a supremely dominant stretch over the last few weeks. The month of June was incredibly fruitful, and it played exactly to the tone, the roster building approach that Kirby Smart has always done. If I told you that they grabbed a bunch of defensive linemen and defensive backs and, a linebacker here, a running back there, if I told you that without naming any names, you'd probably nod and go, yeah, that sounds about right. That's how Kirby's built this thing. I think that what is so important to emphasize, them grabbing as many 4-star or higher, highly rated players to boost the depth of their defense is what has made them so elite. And this class, the way that it's building up with guys like James Johnson and Pierre Dean that they added, Kamari Brooks, there is just enough talented depth to continue to do what they do at a very high level, which is be able to rotate different bodies for different situations and to be able to have the freshest legs in the conference. So many teams try to steal this approach, and so many fail at finding enough guys that can get onto the field and can crack the rotation. And I am also would like to call out one guy specifically that I'm really intrigued by. Getting Minkah Fitzpatrick's little brother, Justice Fitzpatrick, is just an awesome underrated piece to all of this. And that is like one other guy that I think needs to be talked about. That's kind of the crown, not the crown jewel, but like one of the key promising pieces.
Who was Minkah Fitzpatrick's DC?
Gee, I wonder who.
Look, it's
maybe
not
Kirby.
Maybe Kirby Smart. It's not just the 26 class that you bring up here. Joe, they also got 2 commits in the 2027 class. They go out to Long Beach, California, and get Dante Wright, a 6'2", 180-pound corner. They go and get Gavin Honore out of California as well, a wide receiver. And listen, when you talk about recruiting and you talk about why teams continue to have dominance, we talked about who I forget the team we specific. I think it was Michigan that we were talking about on Monday. Joe, the difference is that Kirby's just been doing this, right? Like Kirby has just always built himself from up front in his recruiting classes. Now, you do talk about 2026, and I don't talk about 2027 or years before. Joe, they went out and made a statement in getting Jared Curtis, right? Like it was something that Georgia had not necessarily done, going and getting the number 1 overall quarterback in the country, the number 1 top 10 kid in Jared Curtis. But they go out and get Agboko, the big offensive tackle from North Carolina. They went and got Jordan Smith. And that, I know that was in May. But you talk about Justice Fitzpatrick. You talk about James Johnson. You talk about these guys that they're hitting on. Joe, I read this to you like we did with Michigan. Outside of Jared Curtis, you have an offensive tackle, safety, corner, D-line, corner, safety, D-line, corner, running back, edge, corner, linebacker, tight end, D-line, corner, edge. That is, again, it's the most Kirby thing of all time. Joe, there was one thing that Kirby said that stuck out to me about a month and a half ago when he was talking about the portal and recruiting. It was during spring ball, if you remember. We talked about it a little bit on the show. Kirby came out and said, I want guys that love football. Maybe not the typical all 5-star class that we see always from Kirby. I want kids that love football and are about what Georgia is about. These kids just so happen to be highly talented in that too. I will say that the Georgia class of 2027 is also elite. And I think that there comes a place where you sacrifice some things in 26 to go for 27. Mm-hmm. Regardless of that, Joe, it's like compounding interest with what they do defensively. The more they keep stacking, the more that they're going to do it. You better be glad that some of you, Ole Miss included, got to Georgia this past year. It's not going to continue to happen when you recruit like this. It does not exist. Congratulations, you got them last year to the 3 teams that beat them. It will not last. I promise you it will not last. And when you recruit like this is how you can sustain natties. I will remind people, after Nick got his second national title, it took him a second to, I don't want to say rebuild, but to get that third one at Bama, it took him a little bit to reload. I do feel like that's what's happening with Kirby here.
Yeah, absolutely. I think that kind of getting back to the roots of the roster building approach that's built them the most success. I don't think it got away from them at any point, but the last 2 teams they had, there was a lot of inconsistency, and there was not a lot of total reliability from their offensive lines, their defensive lines.
Yep.
I will say one thing that's always really funny when we see these commitments from recruits is seeing what the national response is, seeing what other fan bases are responding to. And I kind of laugh at some of these other fan bases trying to maybe even downplay the quality of this class and the way this class looks. And then also some folks just chiming in being like, why do they need so many defensive linemen? Like this is unnecessary. Why would you build a roster like this? Why would you question Kirby Smart's approach that he's been doing for this long? And to what you brought up a second ago, finding the guys that are the most committed. If they wanted to just sign the most 5 stars, they would have put together that same class that Jimbo did a couple of years ago, where all those guys left and they transferred to a million different places. Mm-hmm. He is going with the players that he knows that he can get the most out of and that can play specific roles for the different fronts that they like to align in to create havoc. If you have the best and the deepest defensive lines in the country, you are going to be the best teams. We talk about this on a week-to-week basis. It is the easiest indicator for finding if a team is going to win a national title or at least finish in the top 5. Do they have a deep offensive line? Do they have a deep defensive line? Texas answers that question. Alabama's getting back to that. Notre Dame has been to that degree. Oregon has been to that degree. Ohio State was last year. The same culprits every single time, yet sometimes we still have to question it.
Can I throw one thing out there to you?
Go ahead.
Alabama did go into the state of Georgia and get the 2 top kids in the state. So
true.
I'm not – and then A&M went in there and got Tristan Givens. Now, Tyler Atkinson, okay, the linebacker out of Loganville, Georgia, is also on the board. A lot of people believe a guy that's in the top 20s is going to the University of Georgia and will commit there. For the longest time, he was the number 1 player in the state. I just want to, because I know Bama fans and they love to come and hear about recruiting, I will point out that Bama did go in there and get Xavier Griffin. They did go in there and get Edmonds. I wonder if Georgia flips them at any point. I would assume that this battle's not over, and I'm never going to doubt Kirby Smart when it comes to recruiting. So to Bama fans that will come in here, do not act as if that Kirby is going to give up here and that he can't flip some of these kids.
Yeah, that is one of the oddest parts about this is that there's currently 4 5 stars on the On3 industry rankings, and none of them committed to Georgia. Now, Atkinson, from what I had been reading and keeping up with, it seems like he's probably going to end up with Georgia. That's no sourcing. It's just purely off of me reading articles and listening to podcasts. And then Protho seems like he's a pretty heavy lean for them to get. So those are 2 guys, 2 5 stars that aren't even committed that are leaning in that direction. I think the way that we cap this off is by pointing out they're currently number 2 because they've got a lot of names. They will always, on signing day, be a team that finishes aggressively strong.
No doubt.
If they finish with the number 1 class, I would not be stunned, especially over USC, which like USC's done some great things. There's a chance that they kind of even out a little bit as all these other classes start to add some bigger names and some of these bigger names start to commit. Georgia finishing number 1 is 1,000% on the table and should not be something that we would be surprised by.
Joe, they got 7 top 100 recruits. And people are like, well, you didn't get the 5-star. 7 top 100 recruits. Calm down. And by the way, if Atkinson does commit, that's 8. Joe, he literally almost built an entire defense by going out there and getting top 100 dudes. I mean,
right.
That's right. I'm sorry. That's just so dumb. That's insane.
It'll end up being an elite class.
Yeah.
Again, there is such a strong chance that they end up finishing number 1. It feels like we're moving in that direction.
We'll see. They got to make a couple of flips here. You got to get some. If you're going to get the number 1 class, you got to make some flips. And look, do they go in and get a receiver for Jared Curtis? Do they go and get another tackle or guard that they can flip at the end here? I will remind everybody in the University of Georgia, just what happened to you last year with Dylan Raiola can happen for you in the sense of you flipping somebody big there at the end. So Georgia on an absolute heater when it comes to recruiting. I feel like that's just like, I don't even know why we're saying it at this point.
Yeah.
Because it's kind of inevitable. All right. Joe, let's get to a deep dive here. I think that we're going to have a pretty long conversation on the University of Oklahoma as we continue on our deep dives here. Joe, a team that made more moves maybe during the offseason that a lot of people are kind of wait and see on. But John Mateer comes in as the new quarterback at Oklahoma. Ben Arbuckle is the new OC coming from Washington State. And, Joe, the big question is, going into year 2, into the SEC, what do we make of the Oklahoma Sooners?
Last year was incredibly disappointing, justifiably, for Oklahoma fans. And this is not me taking any shot trying to be negative. We try to be realistic, and it felt like a lot of our commentary going into last season, the first year in the SEC, we were trying to say it is going to be a rude awakening. It is not going to be like the Big 12, especially with the schedule that you were just given. And we got a lot of pushback. A lot of Oklahoma fans were upset with that. I think now with the way that they performed last year and the aggressive quality roster building moves that they had in the transfer portal, the expectation should be for this team to be better. We will get to the projection on the schedule at the end of this segment. I have broken down and I have watched the 2 most important players for this team in preparation for the season, in preparation for the 2026 draft. John Mateer, who they brought in from Washington State, I think he is going to be one of the best quarterbacks in the SEC. He is a point guard style guy that is a distributor with a weird ass release. He throws the ball super weird, but he is a great athlete. He's a quick decision maker.
Looks like Phillip Rivers.
No, it's a lot weirder than Phillip Rivers.
It's slingshotty.
Yes, it is. It is very slingshotty is the way to put it. I think that this offense is going to be a lot more dynamic with a guy that kind of combines the 2 traits of the 2 guys that you started at quarterback this past year that didn't perform well, Jackson Arnold and everyone else that you tried to make work. He is going to be a lot better, and he's got his OC. I will like to add in here, though, we have to talk about R. Mason Thomas. The edge rusher, R. Mason Thomas, is one of the most supremely gifted edge rushers in the country. And he is not getting any love. No one is talking about this kid. I have been blown away watching this play, his tape. He is so unbelievably unblockable on some plays. And he was banged up for a period of time. I really think that R. Mason Thomas is going to help raise the level of this defense after they showed us some promise. A lot of it does come down to improvements on their line, which I'm sure that you're going to bring up. But there is a reason to be optimistic because you do have some playmakers.
I'm going to get to R. Mason Thomas in a minute. What I would just immediately respond to you and saying is R. Mason Thomas went up against Will Campbell in the last game of the year last year, the number one tackle that came off the board, and beat him a couple of times. I mean, like it was, I think Will said at the end of the game, like, hey, man, that might have been the toughest guy that I went against this past season, and it's not a shot at Kennard. It wasn't a shot at Stewart. Wasn't a shot at any of those guys that were out there. I will get to R. Mason Thomas in a minute. We got to start with John Mateer. Because, Joe, I don't care what anybody says, what's going to stir the drink for Oklahoma this year is going to be what happens at quarterback. I think that two things have happened in the preparation of Oklahoma this season. Number one is people keep saying, oh, well, he did that at Washington State. How in the world can he go into the SEC in Oklahoma and do what he did? Is Cam Ward not a good quarterback? I mean, he went number one overall, and he was at Washington State, and it's not as if that the level of – I mean, I understand last year the Pac-12, it was different. He played different opponents, whatever. Joe, it's not like Washington State rolled out Rudy Poo Tech every week. I mean, this kid did some really amazing things. I mean, if I'm not mistaken, he ran for 15 touchdowns last year. Like, he threw for a damn near another 30. Joe, he scored 45 times last year. Now, the turnovers and specifically the fumbles, because of his throwing motion, Joe, I don't know if they fix it. I don't know what happens there, but he's got to work on that. The straw that stirs this drink in Oklahoma is going to start with John Mateer. It's going to start with Ben Arbuckle. But, Joe, even if the kid is really good, I don't know at the current moment how much protection that he's going to get. The biggest question mark coming into the season for the University of Oklahoma is their offensive line. When we did this exact deep dive a year ago, you brought this up in the beginning. When we did it, you and I came out there and said, listen, we are not high on this offensive line. We think you're going to have struggles. And we got obliterated. Oklahoma people bringing me on their show, calling me all kinds of names and stupid shit about me saying that they're going 6-6. Joe, really quickly, what was their record last year? 6-6. I don't care what you tell me. Not everything was Jackson Arnold's fault. As they want to point out, it was not. If they do not fix the things that they need to fix up front, Deion Burks being there, going and getting Isaiah Satanga doesn't matter. None of it matters. None of it. Joe, I don't care what anybody believes about Jackson Arnold. One thing that you got to admit, if you are true to yourself and what happened a season ago, you got pushed around up front. Now, you do go back into the portal again and get two offensive linemen and Derek Simmons and Jake Miakula, however you say it. Regardless, Joe, you just went back in the portal to try throw another Band-Aid on there.
Yeah.
Here's where I sit with them offensively. I see all of the very high potential that they could have. John Mateer could easily and 100% go off. I'm not necessarily more worried about John Mateer, as I'm more worried about what happens for him and his protection up front. The good news is that he can move. And he's been in this system for a while now. He's not having to relearn this system. Everyone around him is having to relearn or learn this system, not him. So it gives him an upper advantage on what he needs to do. But, Joe, I am not going to look past you. For Oklahoma fans, your offensive line may be better, but you're going to have to go out there and prove it before this guy comes out here and says that it's going to take a massive leap forward. Joe, they got pushed around. Everybody wants to point to the Alabama game. Oh, we pushed around Alabama. Oh, that's so great. The other 6 games that you played and you lost, you got your shit kicked in. And that is a fact. So as good as you were defensively, as good as things were, and I understand that you had injuries on the offense. I get it. Joe, that offensive line got abused. It did. So if they're able to hold up, if they're able to be better, Joe, they can make some waves and get wins maybe that some people aren't expecting them to get. I just don't know how high I can be on this offensive line. Joe, are they going to magically be so much better after what we saw through 12 games last season?
That is ultimately, I think, the big thing that we just have to like really focus our attention on. None of the great things that they did in the portal and the dominance they had on defense in spurts last year, all that stuff was at a high level. A lot of that goes away if the offensive line doesn't get better. I'll tell you what does look better, and this is a very simple statement. Last year when we pulled up their depth chart, seeing that every damn kid was a portal player, now all the projected starters are supposed to be guys that are returning, and Derek Simmons that they brought in from Western Carolina, who's not projected to start at the current moment, was a really good FCS lineman. I don't think he's a kid that goes on to get drafted, and he might not even start for this team. But he was one of the better FCS linemen this past year, so he's just a nice piece to have of depth. They also brought in Cole Gonzalez, who was one of the best FCS quarterbacks too, which was really interesting, who was Simmons' teammate. I think one part with that, though, Blake, that makes me feel a little better about the offense this season is the fact that Mateer is a lot more mobile. And again, I describe him as a point guard. So if things do break down and the offensive line does get like a little bit better, like marginally better, but they're still giving up pressures, I can kind of trust Mateer to get away from that pressure. I can trust Mateer to get away from things, extend plays, throw on the run. It's not going to be saving every single drive, but to have that in your bag and to have the experience that he did and then the chemistry with Ben Arbuckle, it makes me feel a little bit better about that concern that we're talking about here.
All right, counter argument.
Okay.
Well, first, let me say to Oklahoma fans, coming into this chat, whether it be a live show or a clip, saying, well, Blake, we're just going to be better. You did that last year, and you told us we were idiots, and look at what happened. We have not projected anything as of yet. I agree with you massively on Mateer being able to get out of pressure. The problem that we'll get to in a moment is, Joe, some of the teams that he's playing, Texas included, buddy, good luck, right? Like, I mean, it's not as if I think that he can do some good things and he will be able to get out of some of those pressures. But, man, he does go up against a lot of really good front sevens. The worry for me about Mateer is not that he can't get away from it. Joe, how many times are you going to be lined up in third and short situations and you can't run the ball and you can't keep running John Mateer? You want to win some of these big games against big opponents. The matter of the fact is you got to line up and run the ball.
Yeah.
Name a team that's won in the SEC or, quite honestly, won the Big Ten that, quite honestly, just can't line up and run the ball at will on you. It does not exist because you can't name the team. They do bring in Jaden Ott from Cal.
Yes, who we all really like. Big boost.
Massive boost. Injuries are a concern there. I never want to go into a season assuming that a guy's just going to be injured or he's going to remain injured. Joe, I want to be high on them offensively, but why does my gut tell me, Blake, you're going to have to watch this offensive line before you think that they can get to 8, 9, 10 wins? Like, I just cannot do it yet. I can't get there. As much as I want to like John Mateer, and I do like John Mateer, as much as we've loved the move with Jay Knott, as much as you love Deion Burks, as much as I think Isaiah Satania is a sleeper that's got elite level speed, Joe, I got to be real with you. The straw that stirs the drink may be John Mateer, but Ben Arbuckle is going to have to get the ball out of his hands fast, and you're going to have to protect this offensive line early until they can figure it out.
Absolutely, and I just think overall, though, it does make me feel pretty good that this defense showed a lot of bright signs, and I think that this defense could still end up being one of the best in the SEC. And this is going to come off as weird, but like Danny Stutzman was not as good as everybody thought he was. And I kind of wonder, like, having
Here
a
we
new
go.
fresh.
That's getting
No,
close.
I'm just trying to say that I think having fresh guys at linebacker and having new faces stepping, like Peyton Bowen stepping up into a bigger role, and that defensive line going to work. Like Venables knows how to get the most out of his guys. I think him calling plays this year too is going to be a big boost potentially, as long as he's not spreading himself too thin. Taking over that role. That being said, though, can I read off their schedule, or do you have anything else?
I wanted to just get to their defense really quickly. You're right on our Mason Thomas. Defensively, ironically, because I do think that they will ultimately be better than what they were a year ago offensively. Joe, here's my ironic take. I think it defensively makes them better because they're not on the field as much. Right? Like, I mean, because of offensive success, they will have fewer drives. They won't be on the field as much. Joe, our Mason Thomas, all right.
He's a damn good player.
Well, it's really their whole defensive line. Look, you got Demonic Williams returning. You have David Stone. You have Jaden Jackson. You bring in Marvin Jones Jr., by the way, which nobody really wanted to talk about because of what happened with Florida State, whatever. Joe, their front seven's also going to be pretty damn good. But, yes, let's get to their schedule.
All right. First game versus Illinois State. They host Michigan week 2. That's going to be a fun one. This was really random, and I had to, like, triple check this. They go to Temple.
Yes.
That one's random. They host Auburn bye week versus Kent State versus Texas, at South Carolina versus Ole Miss, at Tennessee, bye week, at Alabama versus Missouri versus LSU.
Oh,
I see if everything goes according to plan, 8-4. Like I don't think that with as hard as this schedule is, I don't think that is a failure.
do you think that they beat Michigan?
Yeah, I chalk that up as a W.
Okay.
Second game of Bryce Underwood probably starting at home. Yeah, I gotta take Oklahoma in that situation.
Well, if you're going there and Auburn is going into Norman, Joe, they play Illinois State, Michigan, which you dubbed as a win. Temple, are you giving Temple the win?
Yeah, no, I'm not giving Temple the win.
I'm pretty sure that you and I don't believe that Auburn, with Jackson Arnold going back into Norman, I don't think that we believe that that's going to be a win, correct?
Yeah, I think that they will beat Auburn.
No, that's what I mean. Think that they're going to beat Auburn.
Yes.
Then they have Kent State at Norman. Then it's where, so that's 5 wins.
They could be 5-0. We could be talking about like a highly ranked Oklahoma team.
A highly ranked Oklahoma team going into a game at the Cotton Bowl versus Texas. Joe, this is where stuff starts falling off. Okay? I don't think you beat Texas. I'm going to say this. Oklahoma fans are going to snicker and say this can't happen. Go ahead and think going into South Carolina against Lenore Sellers is a walk in a park.
Well, especially the game that they played against them last year where they got their asses kicked.
Exactly. By the way, that game was in Norman. Go back and watch what he did to your defense. Joe, what is Austin Simmons at Ole Miss?
Right, we already talked about this. That should be a winnable game at home, but it could very easily be a loss because Kiffin's good enough of a play caller.
Very much so. Can they win in Knoxville? I think with Joey Aguilar, I don't know what's going on with Tennessee and how they're going to look offensively. Just for argument's sake, I'm going to chalk them up a win. So at this exact moment, you go to Alabama.
I don't think they're winning that game. I think Alabama's pissed. They want revenge. They're going to win.
Missouri.
I think that they should be able to beat Missouri.
Okay.
I don't think Missouri is going to be great this year, which we already did that preview.
Then you get to LSU, and we're going to
not beating LSU.
Okay. You said it, not me. Joe, you just rattled off a 7-5, 6-16.
No, wait. You didn't name
Yes,
6
you did.
losses.
Yeah, you did.
No.
Because you said that they would beat Missouri and that they would lose to all those other teams.
Okay.
You just rattled off a 7-5, 6-16.
8-4 is produced by a win at home against Ole Miss, And
you think they're going to beat Ole Miss?
Yeah, I think they could beat Ole Miss. So if they beat Ole
Okay.
Miss and they beat Tennessee on the road, which is going to be really hard to do, and you kind of catch them, or South Carolina road, one of those, that's where 8-4 comes into play. You got to aim for 8-4 here. This roster does not stack up with the top teams in the conference for you to be one of those 9-win teams. That's not a bad thing. It's not a bad thing to be 8-4 after a bad year.
Do you think that 8 wins is their ceiling?
Yes. Yeah, I'm going to say it's their ceiling.
I'm going to go ceiling 9-3 because of John Mateer. If he just goes off, being at that position, being with Ben Arbuckle, I got to go 9-3 as the ceiling. Joe, I think 6-6 is the floor, though. It's a wild.
It's not a bad floor to have. It's better than last year. Our floor last year was
let me ask you this: if he goes
9.
Well, I didn't have him going 3-9. I had him going 6-6.
No, but I'm saying the floor, though, like the worst case scenario was them going 3-9.
Right. I don't know if Venables can survive that.
No. Well, I mean, he's got the benefit of the really good 2023 season that he had, but
and he got a massive extension from it.
Yeah.
I mean, listen, Joe, okay. They thought they could walk in this conference and beat the shit out some teams. And I'm just going to tell you, I do agree with you, the 7-5, 8-4 angle. That's where I see him being. Joe, you're going to go into some hostile places now.
Yeah. Got to lock in. It's gonna require
elite
for them to win
play.
Yes, for them to win 9 football games, you need John Mateer to
go off.
Top 5 quarterback in the country. You need the offense to play a lot better and the O-line to be serviceable. And I mean, God, this is just such a hard schedule.
Joe, even with an average offensive line, I would say they get to 9 wins.
It's just a brutal schedule, and this is what we talked about. Their first 2 years in the SEC were going to be brutal. Texas got handed.
They're not recruiting at the level that they need to compete here.
Right. They could be better. Could be a lot better.
It's going to have to be better. All right.
See what happens.
A lot of people are high on him, and I'm just like, brother, you didn't watch the same games I did. Chuck, who's been after our ass all show, says, dude, if Texas can do it, Oklahoma can do it, point blank. No, you can't. Not right now, not with the money that Texas is spending. You're not doing it. That's the problem. Here's the thing with Oklahoma. Did we come out here and say that they can't do it, or did we come out here and say that you're not currently doing it? We came out here and said that you're not currently doing it, and guess what? You went 6-6, and they were in the playoff in the Final Four again.
Yeah, I think there's a pretty stark difference between the transformation that Texas had and what Oklahoma had, or is trying to do.
1,000%.
Much better, deeper roster what Texas has done over the last couple of years compared to what Oklahoma has.
All right, I'm just telling you. Yeah. Y'all came in here last year, and you called us idiots. All right. I'm so waiting for it. All right.
We'll see what they say.
See y'all on Sunday. Y'all have a good night. Peace.